It's draft season, baby, and we're breaking it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast. We've got our draft expert, Fran Duffy, joining us today. Plus, we're breaking down some big mock drafts and seeing what it tells us about who the Broncos are going to draft in 2 months, and it all starts now. With the 20th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select. We're going to talk about it on today's DNVR Broncos podcast. We are the DNVR Broncos podcast live from the Toyota Lounge, driven by your local Front Range Toyota stores. I've got Henry Chisholm here. We've got Dion Yahir. There's even Alyssa back there, just in case the show really goes off the rails. They're all here to keep it on track. And yours truly, Zach Stevens, rocking and rolling with you today. What's up to the Toyota chat? Hit us with a thumbs up if you're tuning in with us. We really appreciate it. Got a fun packed show today. So, Henry, let's just dive in right now. It is officially mock draft season. Mocks are dropped in left and right. We are 2 months and 5 days away from the first round of the draft. I know you love draft season. How you doing?
Oh, good. We're talking about running backs on the draft pod tomorrow, so I'm cramming a bunch of running back stuff in yesterday and today to hopefully be all ready for that. But yeah.
Well, how prepared do you feel to talk about running backs? Because that's where we're going to start.
I mean, the top ones are easy. The top ones are easy.
Oh, so who are you grinding on? Like, who are the back end guys that we should know?
Honestly, it starts with even like
a lot of people really like Devin Neal. And like you watch the highlights and you're like, yeah, guy's fast, like kind of stout, see what happens. But you just have to then go back through and just like watch not just the highlights and see if he really sucks. But no, there's all of them. All of them.
You're watching all of them. So let's start with the top guys, because Daniel Jeremiah dropped his mock draft 2.0 yesterday, and he has the first round playing out so fascinating in two different aspects when it comes to the Broncos. So I can just roll through the names. First pick, Tennessee Titans. He's got Abdul Carter. Second pick, Cam Ward. Third pick, Travis Hunter. Fourth pick, New England Patriots, going Will Campbell, tackle from LSU. Fifth pick, going Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan. Sixth pick, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Jets picking Tyler Warren at 7. This is a scenario we've talked about, so he's off the board extremely early. Carolina Panthers with the 8th pick. They're going Jalen Walker from Georgia. 9th pick, New Orleans Saints going Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall. 10th pick, Kelvin Banks. 11th pick, Will Johnson, corner from Michigan. 12th pick, Cowboys go Walter Nolan, Mississippi defensive tackle, Ole Miss. 13th pick, Dolphins go Tyler Booker. 14th pick, the Colts go Membo. Am I saying that right? Membo, tackle from Missouri. 15th pick, Falcons go Mika Williams. 16th pick, Cardinals go Kenneth Grant. 17th pick, the Bengals are going Texas corner Barron. 18th pick, Gray Zabel, North Dakota State interior offensive lineman. 19th pick, one before the Broncos, you get McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. That leaves, Henry, the Broncos on the board at 20 with every single running back available, including the star of the show, Ashton Jeanty. The Cowboys passed on him. Every team passed on him, and he is on the board for the Broncos. To me, I said there's two things that jump out in this draft. That's one of them, is Ashton Jeanty is there for the taking. And what makes it even more interesting is he has the Broncos passing on Ashton Jeanty and instead going with Colston Loveland, the second tight end on the board. And according to Daniel Jeremiah, here's what he says about this to justify the pick. He says the Broncos fill a huge need by selecting a tight end with great length, quickness, and big playability. Sean Payton gets his joker on offense. When you see the way the board falls and Ashton Jeanty's there and they go Colston Loveland, what do you think of that?
I mean, I would go Jeanty. I mean, there's obviously a case for Loveland. I mean, he's only 20 years old. He's like a freak. He plays a position that's tougher to find, people say, than running backs. I would obviously go with Ashton Jeanty, but I mean, there are plenty of people out there who would say there's so many running backs, just wait and get one of those.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Henry. I think, man, this would be one where it would be bittersweet for sure. Because the very next pick in Daniel Jeremiah's draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Ashton Jeanty.
Yep.
And he was right there for the Broncos. And it just, man, for me, Tyler Warren, and tell me if I'm wrong, since you've been grinding on all these guys, grinding the tape on all of these guys.
Yeah.
No wonder you here laughed at me earlier when I said that. I didn't pick that up.
Yeah.
Tyler Warren and Ashton Jeanty, to me, are like similar talent levels, like elite, like top 5, top 10 talents in the draft.
Jeanty's a step ahead.
Wow. So
Yeah.
top.
No, I think like Ashton Jeanty, he's the type of running back you see. Like, it's him and it's Bijan and it's Zeke and Saquon. Like, it's kind of a short list of those guys. And Tyler Warren, like Kyle Pitts, even though he didn't work out, still probably the better prospect there. Brock Bowers, better prospect still. So I think Tyler Warren has done a lot of really great things and he's really exciting. But in terms of just like super elite athletes, it's Jeanty up there with Travis and like Abdul. Like, it's a very short list, and then Tyler Warren's kind of in that next group.
So then how do you put Colston Loveland to Tyler Warren?
I mean, it depends on how big you want to make that group, whether he fits in there. I think there are going to be a lot of teams who think Colston Loveland's better than Tyler Warren, for what that's worth. I think the fact that he is so young and you've seen the ball skills, like there was a little dip in production this year, but I mean, he just has traits that are really tough to find. Like those guys who are, 6'5" and can jump and can run, like you split him out, get him one-on-one and just run slants like he's a receiver. Now, you need to hope that he fills out a little bit and provides something as a blocker, but maybe even without that. I mean, Brock Bowers wasn't seen as a great blocker. And I think, again, those are the two you go back to and say, like, Brock Bowers, when he was a freshman, you knew that he was going to be a first tight end off the board. Said the same thing about Colston Loveland. It just happened to be that Tyler Warren had a crazy season, especially the end of the season. Also, I mean, Daniel Jeremiah's mock last year, February 20th, he had Brock Bowers going 18. And so, like, that Colston Loveland, again, those 3-year players who produce well, I wouldn't be surprised to see Loveland off the board at this point, too.
Yeah, but what that means is how much you like Jeanty and him going behind both of those guys. And in Daniel Jeremiah's draft, when he talks about Ashton Jeanty, he says he's a top 5 player in this class. So just like what you're saying,
totally.
like an elite prospect. So that would be surprising, maybe a little disappointing. And it would leave you wondering what the Broncos are going to do at running back, because there's the second interesting thing about Daniel Jeremiah's draft here is he has Ashton Jeanty going 21, right behind the Broncos pick. 22 to the Chargers, he has Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina, going. And then just 2 picks later, he has Trevion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State, going to the Vikings at 24. And this is kind of a new development in the mock draft cycle. Typically, it's just one running back going in the first round, and it's always Ashton Jeanty.
Yep.
Now we see 3 running backs go before the 25th pick. And to me, Henry, after going tight end in the first round, there's a run on running backs late in the first round. That's bad. I don't like to see that. I don't want to see it.
It is bad. At the same time, like Trevion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, you're not getting them in the second round. Like the way the Broncos pick, it still stinks because it means like, no, those guys, if they're not gone in the first round, they're gone by like pick 40. And Daniel Jeremiah is the first one to say like all 3 guys in the first round. I don't think he's crazy to say it though, because they're freaks. Like,
that's what I feel like.
Trevion Henderson, though, like, that's Jahmyr Gibbs' range, and he is a very similar player in a lot of ways. That kind of prospect has gone in this area in the past. Like, it just makes sense for him to go there.
I totally agree with you, but if you look at other drafts, there's some mocks, Henry, that still have Trevion Henderson going in the 3rd round, and I think that's absolutely crazy. But now he's clearly gaining steam, and what I think is going to really help him and kill the Broncos is next week at the Combine. I think he's going to run a 4.4, low 4.4, maybe high 4.3.
Yeah.
And then he's just, I mean, he's going to be talked about as Alvin Kamara. He's going to be talked about as Jahmyr Gibbs because he's a good runner, specifically outside the tackles, and he's obviously a really good receiver as well. So I I agree with you, but I'm hopeful that maybe he can fall to the second round. So then this brings the conversation to, let's say Ashton Jeanty. You'd be okay with the Broncos taking Ashton Jeanty at 20,
definitely.
right?
You could trade up for him.
Let's say he's off the board before the Broncos even consider trading up. Trevion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, they're there at 20. How would you feel about the Broncos using their first-round pick? You just said he's not going to be there. Those guys won't be there in the second round. So how would you feel about the Broncos using the first-round pick?
That'd be a good pick. I think, again, I can't remember if it was this show or maybe it was the draft pod where I said, like, if you take Trevion Henderson at 20, like, that's a good pick. Like, that's going to be exciting. I think, again, you start to see Trevion climbing 24th in this mock draft. What are the other big ones? We'll throw the other ones out there. Nashville Tennesseum has him 26th. College Football Network has him 20th. Seahawks Draft Blog 29th. Pro Football Network 29th. Sports Illustrated 24th. Nashville Tennessean 32nd. 30th, 18th, 30th. Like, you've just gotten to the point where if you want him, you probably can't even trade down and hope. Unless there's somebody else you really like, and there are situations like that. And that is a really, really good football player who's crazy explosive. And those are to me, the guys who I think should be drafted in this range. And that's why, like, an Omarion Hampton at pick 20, I wouldn't be quite as excited about, because he just isn't as much of a... I know Daniel Jeremiah says he'll hit a bunch of home runs in the Los Angeles Chargers system. He to me is not a home run hitter. Like, he's like a triples guy, because you have, like, DBs on the other side are going to run him down. Like, he's fast, but he's just not like that breakaway fast. That's what Trevion Henderson has. That's what Ashton Jeanty has, where it's like that Saquon Barkley, not entire game, but if there is a crease, you're going to hit that crease and nobody's going to catch you. You're just gone. And I think that skill set to me is the one that, if it's there at 20, you just kind of have to take it.
And I agree with you. Trevion Henderson is my number 2 running back in this class behind Ashton Jeanty. I would be thrilled if the Broncos got him. So much so that I think I am warming up on him at 20 being a good pick for the Broncos, because he would, I mean, just think about the two guys that he comes closely to is Alvin Kamara and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, he might not be at the exact level of those guys, but if you would have used the 20th pick on Jahmyr Gibbs, like the Lions did, it's a fantastic pick there. And I think he is that good of a player. And I think it's important that we start having this conversation 2 months before the draft, because clearly I think things are going to continue to trend in this direction, where it's not just one first-round running back. It's 2, 3, maybe even 4 first-round running backs there. And then the Broncos are going to have to decide, do you want to go tight end in the first round and running back in the second round, and you're landing the 5th best running back in the second round, or the 6th best running back in the draft in the second round? Or do you want to go tight end first, or running back first round, tight end second round? Of course, maybe you prioritize something else. There's a best player available, in your opinion. But I think that this is something that we should really keep our eyes on. Trevion Henderson, Henry, he has led the Big Ten in rushing yards per attempt twice in his career. Once as a freshman, averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. And this past year, he averaged 7.1 yards per attempt, had over 1,000 yards after Ohio State added another elite running back just to make the team even better when they added Judkins. And he still was a monster. He's a great teammate. He's a team captain. He's got all the intangibles, and he's got the speed. Some people say he's undersized. Not really. No, I mean, he's 208. That's fine size for a running back. I'm not concerned about his size at all. So I think he's a great prospect and worthy to be a first-round pick.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it'd be a great pick there. Again, you prefer Jeanty. Judkins, not Judkins. Henderson is split carries so much. Like, he's more of that just like pure joker type running back, which is what you need. Again, like Omarion Hampton, even like that. I'd say he's probably going in the first round, and he wouldn't be a bad pick either. It's just that he's more of your between the tackles. I think there are a lot of similarities to like a Jonathan Taylor there, and you definitely wouldn't be upset about drafting a Jonathan Taylor. It just feels like that more Jahmyr Gibbs type of back with the Trevion Henderson would be. It might be more so what the Broncos need right now.
That's fair. That's very fair. I also think he's a joker, but I also think he could be a 3-down back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're drafting somebody in the first round, he better be a 3-down back.
Yeah. Just like Jahmyr Gibbs could be a 3-down back and is a 3-down back, but he splits carries with Dave Montgomery, so it's not, you don't see that like crazy. Okay, let's continue this conversation with our draft expert, Fran Duffy. But before we bring Fran on, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Every Plate, where if you want convenient, easy, delicious, healthy meals, Every Plate can help you dish up better habits with delicious, easy recipes delivered straight to your door, including Calorie Smart, Carb Smart, and Protein Smart options. They've got so many options for whatever you're looking for. They've got it over at Every Plate. With new smart swap recipes, you can swap flour tortillas for lettuce wraps, white rice for lettuce, and potatoes for sweet potatoes to make better for your meals. You get to customize so many things over at Every Plate. You can skip the store and enjoy wholesome, homemade meals that cost less in groceries. And here's the kicker with this. They're going to give you 50% off your first box with code DNVR50 over at everyplate.com/podcast. That's everyplate.com/podcast, and use that code DNVR50. Every Plate offer valid with auto-renewing subscription. Use that code DNVR50.
And we got to give a shout out to our friends over at UC Health. They make this podcast possible along with the rest of our podcasts here. This podcast is brought to you by UC Health, which is the preferred partner of athletes in Colorado. We're all trying to be healthier. I found wearing this retainer, I don't eat as much.
Oh.
Because there's no like... If you go, like you walk by the kitchen, it's like, oh, we just picked up those Girl Scout cookies. Sometimes you just like grab a cookie. None of that. Now that I have this retainer. So maybe that'll make me healthier. We'll see. Learn more about living like there is a tomorrow. You can go to uchealth.org for more info. UC Health, live extraordinary.
All right. As we wait for Fran to join us, Henry, I've got an update from our friend the Danimal, one of the OGs.
Oh boy. What does he have to say?
He chimed in with some president information. How many presidents have they been? Because you hear throughout 51, we said there's been 47. You know, Donald Trump right now is 47th president.
And 45th.
And 45th.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, how do they count these things? So how many have there actually been? According to Danimal, the answer is 54. There's been 54 presidents. And you're like, well, wait, why is Donald Trump called the 47th? And here's why. Is because when a president, and the current president has died or resigned or been impeached,
They don't count?
The next person, the VP that takes their place, is still in that same administration. So it's not counted. They're a new president, but it's still, so like, if Vance took over, he'd still be the 47th president because it's still the 47th administration, but there'd be a 55th president.
Now we know.
Yeah.
That's important information. It's good.
Isn't that...
we learn something every day on this podcast.
I know. That's exactly what we're trying to bring you, is just some straight learning here. So Fran's a little late. He's been... he's having a fridge delivered to his house right now, and they gave him like a 5-hour window. And of course... The people show up right before he was supposed to do this hit.
That could take a while.
It can. Well, I would imagine he can just let them do their thing.
I would hope, yes.
You know, like he doesn't need to help install.
Yeah, and usually there's like a pretty clear spot. Like obviously this is where the refrigerator goes.
Right, like when they pull the old one out.
Exactly.
They're like,
just
this
like a
is
big
where the
old,
new one's gonna go.
Should be
right?
pretty obvious. It's like if they pulled my tooth out. It'd be pretty obvious where you're putting the new tooth.
It would be pretty. You would think.
Yeah. And they wouldn't need to ask like, where do we plug this in? Because it's just right there.
Right.
They've obviously done it hundreds of times.
If you have to, if the installing people have to ask where to plug it in, you might not want them installing your fridge.
That's bad news. That is bad news.
One time I got a new fridge. I lived on the 3rd floor and there were no elevators. And just one guy put the entire fridge on his back. And he was like shorter than me. It was insane.
Was it a full-size fridge?
It was a full-size fridge.
That's hundreds of pounds.
It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
That guy can't be doing well.
Probably only does a couple of fridges. And then,
between 150 and 300 pounds.
Are you looking at pictures of it? Of like how someone just puts it on their back?
I just was curious what the weight is. And that's according to Google AI, which I still don't trust.
Yeah,
it's led me astray too many times.
You don't trust Google AI.
Okay. We all don't trust it.
No, I do. Sure.
Movers.com says 180 to 360.
When Google AI says like eat rocks because it's good for you, okay, you gotta be smart enough to know when like you really shouldn't trust it.
I'm just not like I don't have a frame of reference. I don't know whether to trust the refrigerator weights.
I buy that. Sounds good. It's not gonna hurt me if like I.
Well, you're not the one picking it up.
Well, exactly. That if I was picking it up, I'd probably get a second source.
Fridge.com says 100 to 300.
See, I trust Fridge.com.
But again, Movers.com says 180 to 360.
Well, because they're trying to get their movers more money because they're saying it's heavier.
Hunker.com, not really sure what side they fit into, says 200 to 300. Hunker?
That sounds like maybe a website you shouldn't click on.
Okay,
I don't know. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, because what? Like Saquon squats 400 pounds?
No, well,
Or sorry, Jalen Hurts
600.
600
pounds.
So he could squat 2 fridges. No way he could balance them though.
Or 4 fridges if they're 150.
yeah.
That would be incredible. On the top of his head,
Yeah.
how's he do that?
I have no idea.
Wow.
Wonder what Fran's up to now.
Yeah, maybe maybe they needed help. Maybe he got an extra big, heavy fridge. But if we are able to talk to Fran, I wanna know what his thoughts are on TreVeyon Henderson and these other guys. And Henry, we just got some news.
Oh,
that
good.
I think
We could use that.
I could talk draft all day, but we just got some news about the salary cap for this year. So this is big news for you, with you updating all your numbers and stuff. The NFL informed teams that the 2025 salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million, which is way up from last year's $255 million mark. It will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. So this gives every team, but also the Broncos, that much more money. And I'll say, I'm going to make the case that this benefits the Broncos more than most teams, because the Broncos are dealing with a lot of dead money with Russell Wilson. They got one more year of Russell Wilson dead cap right now. And if they are, that's why this extra money helps them, because the dead cap doesn't increase as well. No, it stays the same. It's $35 million. So I think I'm going to spin it where the Broncos benefit from this more.
Yeah. So I had been working with 265 to 275 million.
Okay.
And what's the new range?
277.5.
Okay.
To 281.5.
To 281.5. Oh, so that's a really small range. So let's just say it's
4
probably
million.
279.5.
Split the difference.
Split the difference.
Good math there, Hank.
Which would mean another 4.5. So that would mean they have, after accounting for the draft class, they would have 39.575 million.
After the draft class.
After the draft class. And if they do the draft class and they bring back every one of their free agents, based on the contracts that I had guessed they'd get, which might be a little bit optimistic on the player side, if anything, they would have... I'm screwing up these numbers. 13.5. They would have 18.4 million.
Okay.
And again, you probably, like, that's assuming you bring back Stidham for 5 million and Zach Wilson for 7.5 million.
You're not doing that.
So you could take that off and add it on. Like DJ Jones would tack on another like $6 million probably, just based on the contract that I had guessed, 2 years and 18 million.
So wait, let's go through the guys really quick. Yeah. And tell me the guys that you have re-signing and how much. Like how much the cap hit would be this year.
Yeah. There's a story up at DNVR.com if you are diehards. It's a great website, all sorts of good stuff. Head coach tracker. Okay, we've loaded the homepage.
Oh, I was like, why are you
we're filling time
right now?
But we're gonna plug the website and all the great stuff there. Fran has all sorts of stuff there, including the draft guide.
Yeah.
So mock draft roundup. We gotta get to the second page here. Oh, that's the podcast. I'm struggling. Oh, news. It'd be on the news tab. And we scroll down, probably page 2.
Oh, this is really slow for you.
Well, yeah, it's because I have so many tabs open, but we're loading. Oh, projected contract for the Broncos 2025 free agents.
Boom.
And we'll click, and now this one is loading. Maybe we cut this out of the podcast version. Oh, I'm not logged in.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So you said they're gonna have $18 million if they sign everyone to the projected contract. So let's say they don't sign DJ Jones. So now they have $24 million. Let's say they don't sign which quarterback was $7 million?
No. Okay, I got the numbers. Okay, so DJ Jones, I had him at 2 years, $18 million. So we have him starting with 18.4 million. If you don't bring back DJ Jones, his cap hit this year is 6.5 million. You'd also have to put another guy on, so you'd save 5.5 million. So that 18.4 would go to
let's just use rough numbers. We don't have to be exactly precise
13
with this.
to 23.9.
Okay, so $24 million. Then What was the quarterback? If you only bring one of them
If
back.
you get rid of Zach Wilson, because he's probably more expensive, you can add another 6.5 on there.
Okay, so you're over at $30 million in cap space right now. Are there any other guys that you re-signed that were
Cody
notable?
Barton would be 5.
I think that's
actually,
realistic that they don't re-sign him, so $34 million.
Yep. Javonte, you probably don't bring back, so you would add one more.
Okay, so 35, just over 35 million.
I think that's probably it.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's just stop right there. Because I feel like, obviously, you have to bring some guys back. But right there, $35 million in cap space that you can spend on free agents. Now, obviously, you're not going to give it all to 2 guys because you still have to build out a roster. But that's significant money right there.
Yep.
And that's cap space where, as you said, Henry, if you give out a big contract to someone, the first year's cap hit's probably going to be pretty small compared to the rest of the deal.
3-year contract, the Broncos usually give out 18% of the money in the first year.
There you go.
So if you're thinking about it, if it's 3 years and $30 million, so 10 a year, you could usually just kind of cut that in half and say about 5.
So the Broncos could go out and sign a $20 million guy, and it's going to cost them $10 million in cap space. They could do that 2 times and then sign the rest of the roster. They could make some big deals this offseason if they wanted to. And what we know from George Paton and Sean Payton after the season press conference, including Greg Penner in there, is they think they're going to be measured, but they also don't mind going after some big splashes and spending a lot of money if they feel it's warranted.
Free agency starts March 12th. Are there questions in the chat?
We are less than a month away from free agency. So
I'd bring DJ back. Like, I think that's the best use of that money.
That's fair.
Best run stuffer in the NFL. Again, because what number did we come up with after all that? 30.
Just over 35. It was like 35 and a half.
So you take it down to like 30 if you bring DJ back.
Fair.
Yep. And then you figure it out from there. And I mean, on top of that, typically teams save about $12 million to go into the season. Broncos recently have been more like $8 million. You also typically, I would guess they probably restructure and save about $10 million. I think based on the past couple of years, that's maybe a little bit conservative, but I think you probably justify more restructuring last year. And, they added all the void years to Zach Allen and Ben Powers and Cortland Sutton. And so they were doing a bunch of that stuff. It's easier to justify when you're paying the $50 million part of the cap hit and say, like, essentially we're spreading Russ's cap hit over like 5 years instead of just the 2 years. And this year with it being smaller, I bet they still do some of that, but not as much.
Yeah, and then also maybe they give out some extensions to Zach Allen, to Cortland Sutton.
Which, if anything, would probably save them money this year, you'd imagine.
Exactly. So maybe instead of restructures, that's what they do. So fascinating. The Broncos now have a lot of money. Cap's going up a ton, over $20 million this season. And Henry, that's why quarterbacks are going to continue to get paid. But we don't need to open that. We don't need to open that door right now.
Zach Wilson getting $7.5 million? You think that's right?
I like that number. Yeah. Maybe not from the Broncos, but from someone.
Darnold got 10 last year.
Yep. And that worked out,
He's not into Darnold range, though, is he?
Why wouldn't he be? Both failed Jets quarterbacks that went somewhere else, did nothing.
Zach was like hilariously bad, though. But maybe Darnold was that bad and it just didn't get memed as much.
Yeah, I think he was that bad.
Yeah. More years separating it.
Sam Darnold just didn't have anything off the field that drew attention. Yeah. Zach Wilson had
that one big one.
A Cougar situation, and it's not referring to his the school that he went to, BYU, that I think just made his time in New York even brighter.
Yeah. Do you want to run through these after the break?
Let's run through them now.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Let's dive into draft stuff after the break.
Cool. DJ Jones, 2 years, $18 million, because he was on 3 years, $30 million before. I believe he'll be 30 at the start of the year. You like 2 years, $18 million?
I don't think it's going to cost that much.
You don't?
Nope.
It's tough because run stuffers are just hard. When you look at the advanced stats, again, like by run stuff win rate, which is ESPN stat, he was the number 1 interior lineman in the NFL stopping runs.
Yeah.
And that's on top of a few months ago, I remember hearing Zach Allen go on Romy's show on CBS and say he's the best run stuffer in the NFL. And then you have the numbers that back it up. And then I talked to Zach a couple weeks later and we talked about it, and he had me convinced. So,
and what was it though? Just last year? No, 2 years ago. Since last year was just a month ago.
Last year,
Malcolm Roach was the with the Saints, his final year with the Saints, he was one of the best run stuffers in the
He
NFL.
ranked 7th.
And then he came and got
Yep.
$3 million per year, $2.5 million per year.
It's different
run
when you're not a
stuffers just
starter, though.
run stuffers just don't get paid as much. So
Yeah.
I think he'd be at $6 million, especially getting older.
That would be awesome.
I'm not saying that's what he's worth. I'm saying that's what I think the NFL is going to say he's worth.
That would be awesome. It's tough when you've got the best one of those guys on the market, because like I think like BJ Hill from the Bengals is out there.
Yep.
But in terms of just like true like nose tackle, especially one who fits so well, because it's all just that attacking, one gapping stuff, which is what got him that contract in the first place, playing in that Saints system where his job is just get upfield, get through this gap. They come here and say like, now you're a nose tackle who's just clogging things up. Like you're just holding your ground, playing both ways. That's not what he's good at. Then we see they make the shift this year and everybody breaks out because that's what Zach Allen's best at, is just shooting gaps. And DJ Jones shooting gaps. Sean Franklin-Myers obviously shooting gaps. Even the edge guys. So I think in this system, you just got to bring him back, especially knowing the salary cap is up where it is. I think you got to bring him back. Stidham 1 year, $5 million. Because remember, he was on 2 years, $10 million before.
I'm probably bringing. No, I don't think he's that much. I think so. I take the under on that, but I would also be more interested in Zach Wilson. I think that's what the Broncos would be more interested in.
How much more would you be willing to pay Zach Wilson?
Couple mil. I
Okay.
mean, if it is drastically different, you don't need Zach Wilson to be here more than Jared Stidham. Like, you don't need it, but I think the Broncos would be more interested in Zach.
Yeah. Cody Barton getting $5 million.
Too much.
Yeah. Willie Gay got $3 million last year. Tyler Dodson got 4.26.
Exactly.
So again, for all of these that you say it's $1 million less, tack another $1 million onto that $35 million. Javonte Williams 1 year, $2 million.
No.
You think he's just minimum?
I don't think he's coming back to Denver at all.
But regardless,
The
just
price,
wherever he winds
minimum. Yeah, unfortunately.
up.
I feel terrible for him with that injury.
Yep. Riley Dixon had 2 years, $4.5 million, which is it's a 28% raise, but
Yeah, probably. Sure. He had a
don't
good
think we
season
care.
last year, bad season the year before.
Cody Barton's probably the last one. Justin Strnad, 1 year, $2.5 million. That's the deal Cody got last offseason.
Yeah, 2.5.
Yeah.
Maybe minimum. He got minimum last year, so we'll see about that.
Yeah.
I like
So
those
maybe we
numbers,
could
though.
find another like $4 or $5 million in there. And
almost
tack
at
on.
$40 million right there.
Yep.
Whew.
And 34.5 if you bring DJ back.
Yeah, there you go. All right, love that. Let's dive back into draft stuff. Fran knew the right time to get his his refrigerator delivered when news was going to break, so we could talk about it. So shout out to Fran. We'll get with Fran later this week or next week. But before we dive back into the draft, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Shady Rays, where every season is a perfect season for Shady Rays. Shady Rays has over 300,000 5-star reviews. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering world-class product. Their shades are durable, crystal clear optics, making them perfect choice for all of your outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find a perfect pair to match your style, your friend's style, your mom's style, your girlfriend's style, your wife's style, whatever you're looking for, your husband's style. They've got it all over at Shady Rays, and they probably have your style and your team's favorite color, too. You want to rep the Broncos? I mean, once we got on the screen right there, the glasses have that orange tint on them. You can find a blue frame with the orange tint, and boom, there's your Denver Broncos sunglasses right there. There's no risk when you shop because they have a worry-free return within 30 days. You can exchange it, you can return it, you can get a new pair, all from that, and they're already affordably priced. And if you want 35% off, head to shadyrays.com. Use the code DNVR for 35% off polarized glasses.
And also shout out to Game Time. I've got a friend coming to town next week. We're trying to find tickets to an Avs game. And so they're two good games. They play the Devils, who are a playoff team. And then 2 days later, they play the Wild, which is obviously an incredible game because it's a divisional game. They're right there in the standings. The prices are like twice as much for the Wild game as the Devils game, as they probably should be.
New Jersey people compared to Minnesota people.
Yes.
that live here.
Yeah, there are a lot of... Yeah, that's trouble. But yeah, so we're trying to get to that.
Where's your girlfriend from?
She is from Minnesota, which is the
And you
other
just
tough
called
part
her
because
trouble?
we always
What are
go
we
to the
doing?
Wild games, and that's the one time she doesn't wear Avs gear. She's like,
Okay, that's trouble. That's fair.
I know, so I don't support it. So we're looking at that, And so I was like looking through all the websites because they're expensive. It's like $100 to get in. Still the best prices at Game Time. So make sure that you are using Game Time because it's what we use for all of the tickets that we buy for any sort of event. And if you use the code DNVR, you can get $20 off. It's gametime.co, not gametime.com. So make sure you remember that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And shout out to everyone in the Toyota chat. Jess, Todd, rebuild this team. We got so many people in the Toyota chat rocking and rolling with us. The Broncos are rebuilt. So if that is a reference to this team, maybe it's like, go for the gold, win a Super Bowl. Maybe that's what you should change your name to. Rebuild this team. But we appreciate everyone that's rocking and rolling with us today. Hit us with a thumbs up if you're tuning in. It helps us a lot, especially in these off-season pods. When we're rolling with you 5 days a week, we really appreciate everyone rocking and rolling with us today. Okay, Henry, let's dive back into the draft because there's one other conversation that I want to have. I looked around over, and speaking of, you gave a shout out to thednvr.com, our website earlier. I want to give a shout out to him again because I have a piece that I dropped last week and I'm going to continue to drop as more mock drafts come out where we're kind of rounding up the mock drafts, the top mock drafts. So I reached out to you, our draft guy, Andre, and got the names of the top guys and gals that do mock drafts and companies that do mock drafts out there. And we came up with a list of 14 of like the best mock drafts out there to not just be throwing anything out there. And I'm looking at them and going to see who has who each of those have the Broncos picking. And there's 14 of them. We've actually got a graphic up for you guys that we can pull up if you're watching in on YouTube here. Here's 10 of them. And as you can see, the most popular pick to the Broncos right now, Henry, is Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan. We mentioned him earlier. In 14 of the mock drafts, he was mocked to the Broncos in 7 of them. So half the mock drafts have the Broncos drafting Colston Loveland.
Yeah. No, and I mean, as they probably should. Because again, Jeanty should be off the board by then. Tyler Warren should be off the board by then. And Colston Loveland is a great prospect who, I mean, he'll slide in this draft because Tyler Warren exists. And if you can get him at 20, that's a steal.
You think Colston Loveland at 20 is a steal?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
No, I mean, that's just like a straight up blue chip tight end prospect. Again, like big, tall, can play. He's like a weapon in the passing game. Only 20 years old. Like he just kind of checks all sorts of boxes that you want to see checked.
It's really funny in the Toyota chat. We have back-to-back comments on most. Broncos Tube says, I really don't want Loveland. And then Todd Anderson says, I love Loveland. And I think a big thing that people have to just get over is taking the second tight end in the first round. Because tight end typically isn't a position where there's multiple taken in the first round every single year. So people just aren't used to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not good. He's young. He's raw. He's a really good receiving weapon. And that's what the Broncos need. And that's what Sean Payton wants at that tight end position. Sure, would he like Tyler Warren and as an all-around guy? Of course he would. But he really just wants a receiver at the tight end position and one that's going to be good. As Human Clock says, Loveland is a dog. Yeah, he is good. He has not had... Michigan is a run-first team. So you can't really look at his numbers. You got to look at the tape, and when you watch it, he is hard to guard out of Michigan. And Solomon Williams in the Toyota chat says, Michigan's tight ends scare me a little bit. Jake Butt was a really good prospect. He just had 3 torn ACLs. Loveland does not have 3 torn ACLs, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, the numbers are good. It's just that you have guys like Harold Fannin is out there putting up, 1,300 yards.
Tyler Warren, 1,100. Yeah,
exactly. And so, like you said, it's a bad Michigan offense that really couldn't do anything. He had twice as many receiving yards as any other receiver at Michigan.
Wow.
It's still 58 yards a game, which is good, especially for a team that was like flip-flopping quarterbacks, doing all that sort of stuff. Again, like you expect him to get better. And if he winds up being better than Tyler Warren, you can't be surprised about it. I mean, he's a very good, again, just blue chip type prospect, whereas Warren is a late bloomer who is gritty and has kind of found his role. And I think he's going to be a great player, but if his physicality doesn't translate to the NFL as well as you'd hope, if he turns out to not just be some like beast who can't be tackled, then all of a sudden the door's open for Colston Loveland, who at some point in his career, he's going to have 1,000 receiving yards. You know, he's going to have 100 catches, I think, just because, again, when you watch him play, he just does so much over the middle of the field, whether it's just shallow stuff, especially like those crossers from the tight end spot. He just gets deep and splits zone coverage. And there's a lot of things that he does well, and I think he would patch the Broncos offense together perfectly, because like the best passing play was that dig to Cortland Sutton. They just run that over and over. But that's kind of a long developing play, waiting for Cortland Sutton to get upfield and break and then hit that window. Colston Loveland can do all that stuff, but from closer, and it just comes open so much more quickly. It's another way to attack those same gaps, which is where Bo really excelled. So I think he'd be a great pick. I think I'd obviously prefer Tyler Warren, and I'd prefer Ashton Jeanty too, but definitely would not complain if the Broncos get Colston Loveland.
Would you complain if they traded up to get him? Because that's what Chad Reuter has. He has them trading up to the 16th pick with the Cardinals and sending a 3rd-round pick and a 6th-round pick to the Cardinals and getting back the 16th pick and a 5th-round pick.
It just depends on who else is there. Like, if Tyler Warren is still on the board and you're trading up, that's crazy. You know, if Ashton Jeanty's still on the board, I certainly would not do that. If those guys are gone and like maybe you've already lost Travion Henderson too, then I wouldn't hate it. But again, Travion Henderson, I'd be probably just as happy as I would be with Loveland at 20. So if you're still thinking he's going to be there, I certainly wouldn't be trading up.
And then the second most popular pick for the Broncos in this mock draft roundup, Ashton Jeanty. 5 people are taking him, having him fall to the Broncos, and then having the Broncos take him right there.
Yeah, and I still think he's going to be gone by 20. I think that his stock is the lowest it's been since like the middle of the season. Because even before the season, I mean, we're talking about, I think on the Draft Pod episode before the season talking awards, I think his name came up as like a Heisman candidate. It's not like this was like totally out of nowhere. He's been like a great running back prospect for a long time, and capitalized on it. So I think that this is kind of the lull. And I think that by the draft, people are going to kind of come to their senses, and he's going to be way up at the top. I think he should be one of the. I think he should be the first player drafted after Travis Hunter, like non-quarterback. The teams that need quarterbacks need to go do it. But
so the Cleveland Browns to draft.
Yeah, if you're talking impact, like he is going to be the most impactful player. And so I think he should be gone there. And I don't think that will happen at this point because the stock is so low, but I still think he's probably a top 10 pick at the end of the day. But hopefully this never changes and he's there at 20 and the Broncos can get him, because imagine just adding LaDainian Tomlinson to your football team.
Yeah,
like that's a great thing to be able to do.
Give me LaDainian Tomlinson right now. Imagine how much that's going to help Sean, Bo, the offense, everything. This entire team. And 6 drafts actually have him falling to the Broncos at 14. But Daniel Jeremiah, like we talked about, has the Broncos passing on him. So nearly half the mock drafts think that he will fall, which would be incredible. Broncos will get a top 5 player in the draft there. One person had the Broncos taking Tyler Warren, probably my dream pick, but a lot of people just think he's going to be gone before their pick.
Yeah, and I think his stock is probably at its highest right now. You know, again, it's held up there for like a month now, or pretty close to a month. So maybe this is steady, and Jeanty's been down there for a month. But you know, it's another one where you talk about him in October and say like, wow, he just had an incredible game against Michigan, or like USC, he was dominant, and so you get excited, and then you get to the end of the year and everybody sees what he does in the college football playoff, because that's just kind of when people pay more attention. They aren't watching what he's doing in these random games, because he was doing the exact same stuff all season. So that's when all of a sudden people catch on, and the mock drafters catch on and say like, oh, he's up there. But again, there as much as we criticize people for drafting based on like, well, you take him because he's big, not because he's good at football, because he's fast, because he's not good at football. Like those things do matter. And I think that once you get through the combine and see how he runs and some of that sort of stuff, it'll humanize him a bit after people kind of saw him as a superhero during that CFP.
He was a superhero this entire past year, though.
Totally.
Including in playing against a great Notre Dame defense. He was the best player on the field.
Yeah. I mean, there are just a bunch of questions. Like, what would Colston Loveland be in 3 years if he went back to Michigan? He might be Tyler Warren. Again, not the exact same style of player.
But Tyler Warren is that guy right now.
Exactly. And that's the appeal, is that, look, yeah, he's an older prospect, and I still don't think we know what his age is, which is insane. I almost thought I saw somebody tweet that they figured it out, but that was a few weeks ago. Yeah, but I mean, you're drafting a more polished prospect, which there's an appeal there. There's also an appeal to the 20-year-old with the crazy upside who's going to run fast and has the insane catch radius, and probably has like more pure athletic traits, although Tyler Warren obviously just beats people up.
Yep. And let's move on to the last 2 picks in this mock draft roundup. And the Toyota chat has absolutely nailed it. Going with the safety position. There's been some conversation, a lot of conversation in the Toyota chat about should you take a safety? Well, one of the safeties taken is Georgia safety Malaki Starks, and then South Carolina safety Nick Emmanwori, who actually was Daniel Jeremiah's first pick for the Broncos. And then the second mock draft, he didn't take him. So now there's been no Emmanwori picks for the Broncos, but that was in there. Henry, a safety with this 20th pick, specifically these 2 guys. Let's say I told you George Paton and Sean Payton said we're taking a safety at 20. Both of these guys are on the board. Which one are you going with?
That is tough. I'd probably go Starks. Just sometimes those bigger safeties don't pan out. Again, I think, usually they do, and I think he'd be a fun player, and I think you could play him in the box, and he would unlock some different things, especially if you don't figure out that second linebacker spot. He would kind of give you an out, or at least one option to get creative and get 3 safeties on the field. But, again, you have PJ Locke, too, who can also do some stuff in the box. He just isn't quite as big. I certainly wouldn't mind a safety. I think, again, all I really would mind is if you go get a tackle. Other than that, I don't think. I guess a quarterback too. We got to throw that in there, like punter, kicker. But for the most part, if you want to go get Gray Zabel, who might be on the board still, and all of a sudden you say we think we've got a future Pro Bowl center, that's a great pick. If you think this safety is going to wind up being an all-pro type safety, if you like Malaki Starks, if the Derwin James comps are real, yeah, that's a great player to add. I think it's easy now to say well, you just have these big glaring holes. The holes aren't going to be so bad when the draft comes around. You're going to have another tight end on the roster. You're going to have another running back. They might not necessarily be game changers, but you won't feel quite as desperate.
Yeah, I personally would be very wary of a safety. I mean, if you draft a safety at this spot with the Broncos' needs and how good their defense was last year, you have to hit. It has to be a guarantee. When I look at these 2 safeties, the guys that are being talked about as first-round picks, Starks feels like a more sure thing with maybe a slightly more limited upside. I mean, he's still a very, very good player. And Emmanwori, I mean, being 6'3", 220 pounds, he's getting the Derwin James comparisons. He's huge. He had 4 interceptions last year. He can play all over the field. He's fast. He's the guy with maybe a lower floor, but a much higher ceiling. You just have to hit at that spot. So I wouldn't love it, especially if Ashton Jeanty or Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland are there with how much those guys could help Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and the Broncos offense. I'd really rather prefer they do that, but you have to hit if you go safety there. That's when you would have to hit.
I feel like you got hit on every position, though,
I mean, you want to hit on every position, but if let's say you do pass up on a Colston Loveland to go safety with how good this Broncos defense is, with how much you needed on offense, you just have to hit more.
Yeah.
I would blame the Broncos less for hitting on an offensive guy than a defensive guy in this draft.
Yeah, I guess. Again,
or for missing on a defensive guy or an offensive guy than a defensive guy.
You still need more in the secondary, though. As well as they played, your depth is bad. Your depth is bad in the secondary. And I like Chris Abrams-Drain, and I like the things that we saw. You still can't count on him. You look at the
I don't think the depth's bad at corner.
Really?
You're three deep at starter, which is great.
But that's again, that's not. Those are starters.
I'm continuing.
I know.
I'm continuing. Sometimes you only have two safeties or two corners on the field, which makes then one of those guys great depth. I do really like Chris Abrams-Draine. I really like you couldn't ask for more from what you saw from him last year as a rookie. So I really like him. And realistically, if we're going through every position, we could probably poke holes at every single position.
Yes. Because it's a thin team.
You could do that for every team in the NFL.
But see, that's where I was going. Is you look at the two cornerbacks who were taken at the end of the first round last year. Cooper DeJean coming off an injury, so it's a little
second
weird.
Round.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But again,
taken
like
at 40.
You don't draft him because you need him. You draft him and he winds up starting 6 games over the course of the season because of injuries, and he pops. Nate Wiggins, who was end of the first round for the Ravens. I think he started 5 games in the regular season because you already had Marlon. You already had like your defense set up.
So really quick,
they needed some depth.
So really quick, tell me the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Both of those teams you just pointed to.
But again, you're certainly more desperate on offense. It's
not even close.
No,
you're talking about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, and Dallas Goedert for the Eagles.
Totally.
When you talk about the Ravens, you're talking about Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. It's incredible what those teams have, what the Broncos don't have. That's why it's not the same conversation.
No, but it still is true that, again, a lot of teams take first-round picks and say, like, yeah, we've got our starters here, but we know that there's going to be a time to work you in. Or, again, the problem for the Broncos secondary is that you have your 5 guys. If one of those guys goes down, what are you going to do? And I get, like, we liked what we saw from Chris Abrams-Draine. He also had, like, the horrible penalty that gave him 40 yards and set up the touchdown. Like, it's not like you can look at Chris Abrams-Draine and say, like, oh, we're set if that happens, because it's just going to really suck if you get to the end of the year and say, hey, we got to win whatever 2 of these last 3 and we win the AFC West. And not to name names, but like, oh, PJ got hurt. We got to throw Devin Key out there. And that's why you fall. And I get that
no team is
the situation, though.
But you could do that with any team, Henry. And if you're looking at depth in the secondary for your first round pick, when you have so many glaring needs on offense, again, let's say all of these offensive guys are gone. That's when I'm open to the idea of a difference maker on defense in the first round.
If you can get Colston Loveland, you go get Colston Loveland. Like, if you can go get Ashton Jeanty, you do that.
That's what we're talking about.
Well, no, then we're on the same page. But the idea of taking defense isn't crazy because, again, you're just lacking depth everywhere. And the way that you build that is by saying, like, you're in the Ravens situation, say, we've got Brandon Stevens, we've got Marlon Humphrey, we've got Tre'Davious White, and we're going to get Nate Wiggins because at some point we're going to need him. And if we need him and he pops, then we're set and we don't need to re-sign one of those guys. It's just a healthy process. And just because you're more desperate elsewhere doesn't mean that you can't keep setting that process up in other spots. As much as it'd be great to get a game-changing weapon on offense, that guy's not there. You definitely don't force it because that's how you wind up making bad draft picks.
All right, speaking of bad draft picks, let's jump into our daily segment this week of grading draft classes. We graded the 2024 draft class on Monday, the 2023 draft class on Tuesday, and now let's get into the 2022 draft class where the Broncos had many picks, but didn't start until the final pick of the second round when the Broncos went Nick Bonitto. The Broncos' first round pick was traded for Russell Wilson. We're not going to hold that against them in this. We're just going to grade the guys that the Broncos picked, and there's a lot of guys, Henry. So let's go through these guys individually, kind of grade them out, and then go through as a class and give them grades. And when we're grading them, grade us in the Twitter, or grade them in the Twitter chat with us. Hit us with the thumbs up too. And let's start with that first pick, Nick Bonitto.
Yeah. I mean, that's an A+. It is. I usually don't give out the A+, but you really can't say much more than that. 14.5 sacks, you'll love it. Again, slow start in the first 2 years, didn't really give you much. I guess beginning of his second season, he had the 5 sacks in 5 games, but then finished with 8 for the season or something. So there was a little bit there. But he had his breakout season. I'll go with the A+, although I do wonder if maybe A is the more reasonable answer, but we'll go A+.
What? Yeah, I'd go an A. 1 year ago, we were worried about Nick. He was a backup on the Broncos depth chart last training camp, and he went out and almost led the NFL in sacks. All credit to Nick. But honestly, Henry, when you look at this pick, this is exactly what the Broncos projected for him. You don't get a super talented pass rusher with the 64th pick if there isn't a lot of development that he has to do. So they drafted him. While they didn't fully come out and say it, they had to have known, like, he's going to take a couple of years until he pops. What happened? He took a couple of years before he pops. I mean, you could go A+ on this one as well, because a guy to get a pick before the 3rd round that turns into a star who's looking at $23-25 million a year, A+. I'll go A+ with you there. Greg Dulcich, next pick. 3rd round, Greg Dulcich. We know how obsessed Nathaniel Hackett was with his hair.
I'll go D-.
Yeah, that's nice. It's an F. It's an F.
I mean, 406. Oh, totally.
He did nothing when he was on the team.
That's not true, though.
He did nothing, and I feel bad for Greg because injuries just killed him. But he provided failing for what a 3rd round pick should be.
Yeah, I mean, I would say what? So 464 yards. Grant Calcaterra, who's still with the Eagles, who's playing, 418 yards. Connor Hayward, Jelani Woods, people liked him, 312 yards.
Yeah, it's not saying that those aren't Fs as well.
Again, like we're nitpicking. Like I say D-. Yeah. Like he did give you something there.
You were looking for more than 150 yards per season.
Certainly.
When you got him.
Totally.
So it's fine. You're going D-. I'm going F. Let's move on. Damarri Mathis with a 4th round pick.
C. I think you probably get what you usually get for 4th round picks. Like some flashes, but not necessarily a guy who you want out on the field. Figured some things out on special teams at points this year. But again, like not certainly you would rather roll the dice again with a 4th round pick than say like we like what we got.
I agree. And that's why I'm going C- close to you. Any Uwazurike in the 4th round where he missed an entire season.
Yeah.
Due to his own gambling on his own team.
Yeah.
In the locker room before games.
Because he just has the 1 sack, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
No, half a sack.
Oh, half a sack. Yeah, D- F. Right in that range.
Right there with you. Yeah. Hopefully he can turn that around. This is still the first 3 years are all going to be just progress reports, so we can turn it. They can turn it around starting tomorrow. It's pretty much going to be report cards. Could still change, but for the most part, I think we're going to know what these guys are. So, going with you on that one right there. Montrell, Washington.
Delarrin?
Did we not say DTY?
No.
Yeah, let's go DTY.
That's another 5th round. Maybe that gets him up to like a D-. He was good on special teams.
A D.
And if you're good on special teams, that's worth it in the 6th and 7th. 5th
D.
round
sure.
isn't. Yeah.
Montrell, Washington. Speaking of special teams.
Just stick with the D-.
Yep. Agree with that. Luke Wattenberg. Here's some bright spots.
Yep. He was good, especially for a 5th rounder. It wasn't great. I'll say B+.
That's exactly where I was going to go. B+ there. Look, he was your starter this past year. For a 5th round pick to step up in his 3rd year and become a starter, I'll take that. For a great offensive line, I'll definitely take it. Matt Henningsen in the 6th.
Yeah, didn't get on the field much this year.
Henry, I thought he was going to be like a big-time role player after his first year.
Jordan Jackson took his job. Again, 6th rounder, you got something from him. That's good. Right now, again, you had a great defensive line, and that's why he got into a couple games, 2 games maybe.
Yep.
I don't have it pulled up. But yeah, I'd say B-.
Yeah, go C. Just pretty average for what you got there. And then Faion Hicks is a 7th round pick. He's played in 4 games. I guess you got to go D because he was a 7th round pick and hasn't done anything. F, sure. Okay, now Henry, we've went through them all. There was an A+.
Yeah.
There was a couple Fs. Where does this class grade out for George Paton?
I could give it a C+.
C+, okay.
Yeah. Again, like Bonitto this year is carrying it. Luke becoming a starter helps, but also that means you got 2 starters out of 10 picks, so that's not good.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'll go B- just because maybe Nick Bonitto. I mean, he's a second team All-Pro.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go B- there. But man, Nick, you got to carry this whole class on your back right now because Luke's gonna help you a tiny bit, but outside of that, Henry, in a year from now, this could definitely be a C, or the grades could go down if no one else does anything.
Yeah, I mean, if Nick Bonitto takes a step back,
right,
that'd be the one. Or Wattenberg gets benched.
Looking forward to give out actual report cards tomorrow for the 2021 class. I think that one's going to be a heck of a class. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow on the DNVR Broncos Podcast, 11 a.m.
We all silly like the mayor.